Welcome, everyone, to the Boiling Point podcast. I am your host, JD, alongside our newest team member, Casey Reed, who is also, you probably noticed from a couple of episodes from our West Shore School District coverage. Him, and Mariana are joining the team, as well as a few others, to help us not just cover the West Shore School District, but also get involved in some other stuff. So we are excited about that and to have you on the team, Casey. Thank you for joining the team, and thank you for joining me tonight on this busy night for both of us.
Good evening.
Marcus Fredrickson played us in. He does the music. Absolutely. Check him out, reverbnation.com/Marcus Fredrickson, and share out your favorite song. And then, of course, go check out The Humankind on Facebook. Order yourself some apparel. Casey, now that I've done the little shout, oh, wait, I'm sorry. Check us out, Facebook, YouTube, yes. Rumble. Please hit that subscribe button. Hit that share button. It does help us with the algorithms and help us grow. We're trying to grow our followers this year. We're trying to get some sponsorships. So help us by sharing out and hitting that subscribe button. Okay, now that we've taken care of some of that stuff, Casey, we're joined here. We're going to talk about the after the meeting on 220. I said this while we were doing the live watch along, of course. You finished speaking. The president gabbled out extremely quickly. And I mean, like, listen, it's always quick when those meetings close out. Don't get me wrong. It's always quick. You know what I mean? It's always, we're adjourned. Mm-hmm. Bang. And then you're out. This one was like super fast. Like, I think she was ready. She had her hand on that gavel. If this camera did not even go back to the school board, the meeting ended with you on the screen. So that's how fast it happened. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to have you on because now Mariana did talk about it. We haven't had a chance to post that little segment that she recorded last night. We haven't gotten a chance to post that on our channels yet. I will be posting that likely before this gets posted. So if you haven't watched it, you can go watch that too. But a lot of stuff happened after the gavel meeting was closed and it went off the air and we lost the feed. So why don't you tell us what happened?
I'm sorry, John. I can't hear you.
Oh, you're having, okay. Are we having some technical issues?
You just skipped out there for a little bit. I can hear you fine now. Yes.
All right, okay. Hold on.
So basically after the
tell
meeting.
Us about what happened.
Okay, so immediately after I was done speaking, that was the end of the meeting. One of the ladies in the crowd absolutely lost it and started yelling and screaming. And I guess the president of the board saw her before she even started speaking that she was about to blow up. So she quickly gavelled the meeting, had them shut off the recording, and she even called, the president did, the security over to get involved to make sure nothing went beyond just shouting. And she was just basically extremely triggered by my speech itself. And started screaming, "How dare you say I don't exist? How dare you deny my humanity?" I'm like, I never said you don't exist. I said you're confused.
Yeah, which of course you weren't doing. So let's go do the speech for anybody who wasn't there or didn't get to see our live stream. Can you give us the speech, and I'm going to put it up on the screen for anybody who's watching also.
Sure, because I actually have it. Yeah, I actually have it typed out here because I actually type out all my speeches when I speak at the school board, and I'd rather not. I would prefer to give the board eye contact when I'm speaking to them and speak, just straight from the heart. Unfortunately, I'm severely ADHD, and we have very limited time to speak. And I usually have about 2 hours worth of stuff I want to say going through my head. So I have to sit down and summarize it as briefly as possible in a nutshell and say as much as I can within that 4-minute span. Now, this speech is actually under 3 minutes, but that's why I type it out. But also, and as it turns out, serves to be another purpose, which we'll talk about further, which is to have proof of what was actually said, lest any controversies arise, because I was not expecting the amount of blowback this got, and I'm actually kind of satisfactorily surprised that it got so much, because obviously I struck a nerve. But with no further rambling on myself here, I'll read the speech now so there's no question of what we're talking about. Okay, so I sat down and stated the following. I would like to address a matter in which the correct conclusion is so obvious that it's a disgraceful indictment of our societal condition that it even needs to be stated. I refer to the fact that males should not be allowed to invade female spaces, including, among many other scenarios, men and boys competing in women's and girls' sports. Would we allow a 21-year-old college athlete to identify as 14 and compete against 7th and 8th graders in middle school sports? Would we allow a 285-pound wrestler to identify as weighing 100 pounds and compete in that weight class? Would we allow a perfectly healthy varsity track and field athlete to identify as disabled and compete in the Special Olympics? A solid no answer is the obvious conclusion and is no less the case concerning males invading female competitions. Contrary to the destructive claims of gender confusion advocates, there are exclusively and only two genders, and they are determined exclusively and only by one's X or Y chromosome combination. No amount of drug consumption, bodily mutilation, fantasies, or desires will alter this biological blueprint. Even in the extremely rare, almost non existent, tragic genetic deformity resulting in someone being a hermaphrodite, it is still not a third gender, but rather a combination of both genders in the male female binary. These are the irrefutable and unavoidable obvious scientific facts, not opinions. If any so called, quote, expert disagrees, I again extend my ongoing challenge for you to publicly come forward and logically and scientifically justify your claim. I haven't had any takers yet, nor do I ever expect to. I strongly beseech this school board and implore you to make the undeniably right decision and pass a clear policy forbidding boys from invading girls' sports and robbing the best female athletes of their duly recognized achievements and victories. Consequently, also protecting our girls from perverts, predators, abusers, and mediocre male athletes stealing for themselves awards that they've neither earned nor deserve. And to further secure this policy from semantic chicanery, define male and female exclusively and only by their biological sex, not imaginary identities or assignments. Follow science, common sense, and decency, not delusions, degeneracy, and stolen honor. This also needs to be followed up in the future concerning restroom policies as well. If you and this board can't even make such an obviously correct decision on this issue, then you can't be trusted with your involvement in anything pertaining to minors. God bless and have a good evening. So that was just for clarification to put in perfect context exactly what was said and how it was said, and said, nothing more, nothing less.
Yes,
but yeah,
which of
this
course we
created
also
a stir
document.
beyond anything.
Yeah, we also documented it as we
Sorry.
live streamed the show also. So yeah, we have it now twice, exactly what was said. And
right.
now let's talk
and
about.
Then,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so the one lady, she's part of this little Satan club that comes to almost all the board meetings. And for anyone who might be seeing this for the first time, I'm not being facetious or just, insulting somebody. I'm talking about literal Satanists. There's an actual group of Satanists and, self-proclaimed Marxists and very active other activists within the whole rainbow apparatus that come to almost all of these meetings, and they make their voices heard very clearly and distinctly. And they were highly offended and upset at this speech. But of course, as is common the case with people that on that ideological spectrum, they never tried to refute anything I said, especially on any fact-based argument. They simply threw out wild accusations like I'm denying her humanity, I'm saying she doesn't exist. And I said, I never said you don't exist. I'm saying you're confused. It's a psychological disorder. And then she's like, what about people who are intersex? Now at this point, I replied with something that was technically incorrect, because I said, well, no such thing exists. Now, what I did not understand a week ago, I just recently found out, I had heard the term intersex before, but I always assumed it was part of the whole imaginary set of genders they're constantly adding to the whole apparatus. It's actually the new term for hermaphrodite. And apparently people have taken umbrage with my use of the term hermaphrodite in my speech, even though it was the only term used for centuries to describe that specific condition, and even till this day is in the most updated medical dictionaries. It is a scientific correct term. But I guess sometime within the last 25 years, I'm assuming at some point somebody somewhere decided to change it to a new term called intersex, but it's literally the exact same phenomenon describing the exact same condition, no difference. They're interchangeable, potato, potato, tomato, tomato. It's it's all
Yes.
the exact same thing, but they suddenly, in a bizarre twist, now determined, at least people on that ideological spectrum, that intersex is the only appropriate term now, and to say hermaphrodite is somehow insulting or demeaning and inappropriate and improper, which doesn't really compute, but that's their rationale. I
Yeah.
believe they simply zeroed in on that and are trying to create a false controversy to avoid
Let's
any
yeah.
honest,
Let's
open discussion on the facts of this matter and to obfuscate it.
yeah. Let's
Go
talk
ahead.
about the
What
facts
were you going to
now
say,
of these
Jonathan?
terms and what they
Mm-hmm.
mean and what the right terms are. So that way everybody knows, and we'll
Mm-hmm.
also find out whether or not you were actually being disrespectful by using the term hermaphrodite. So
Mm-hmm.
hermaphrodite refers to someone who has both male and female parts, but more accurately, it also technically refers to someone who has male and female reproductive systems. Okay, which is something that is technically not
Mm-hmm.
possible for a human being. Okay, that's the only difference. Now, hermaphrodite was the term that was widely accepted for people who had been born with both male and female sex organs,
Mm-hmm.
or the XXY chromosomes, because they can have organs but not a reproductive system. Okay, usually
Mm-hmm.
people that have any chromosome disorders don't have a male reproductive system and a female one. Even though they may have parts
Mm-hmm.
of both, they usually
Right.
only have one or the other in terms of a reproductive system. Okay, that's very important here.
Correct.
Reproductive
Mm-hmm.
systems are important for deciding whether you're a male or a female. So the biggest difference, that's the difference now between
Mm-hmm.
intersex and hermaphrodite, is the intersex is a more accurate term. That's why it's being accepted. Hermaphrodite is falling to mean something else. Hermaphrodites are now referred to more as different animals that have that possibility than for people. Intersex refers to people who have both male and female genital
Yeah.
organs. Okay, but that doesn't change the chromosomes.
Right. And
It's
that
still
is,
a genetic disorder.
yeah. Right, and I don't mind the if they want to make the language more precise, but to suggest that somebody is somehow being, hateful or discriminatory because they're not up to speed on the latest terminology changes is absurd.
Yeah.
And like you said, you articulated there, we're not even in this condition. There is obviously one specific gender that is paramount, and and furthermore, this condition is also extremely rare. I mean, you're talking, I think, less than 1/10 of 1% of the
Yes.
population is born with this. Everybody else is exclusively male or female. They either have two X chromosomes or an XY chromosome. They either have a penis and testicles, or they have ovaries and a vagina. Period. But in
Yeah.
this
Let's
rare
talk about
condition that is, a tragic genetic deformity,
yeah.
you
Let's
do
talk about
have
the
this phenomena.
percentage.
However, what I'd also
Yeah. Let's talk about
I
the
don't know
percentage
the
for a minute.
exact percentage, but I know
I
it's
have it. Don't worry, I have it. That's what I'm
but I
here
know
for.
it's extremely rare.
It's
Mm-hmm.
the
Okay.
percentage of births with intersex is 0.018%. So that is less than 0.02%. Okay.
0.01 mean that's 1 out of every 10,000,
Yeah. 0.018.
because
Yes. Yes.
1% is 1 out of every 100. 0.01%, that's 1 out of every 10,000 people.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And
it's
also,
very rare.
yeah, very rare. And also, a lot of people are
Mhm.
mistaken with this 1.7% percentage that is also going around. That's not a correct percentage. It's not right. Okay, it was an estimate that was used
Exactly.
by an equation, and
And here's
it's not even close.
what that's doing, and that's a good point, because this goes into something else, and is all part of the deception. What they talk about with 1%, see, they take this biological, physical phenomenon of hermaphrodite, intersex, whatever you want to call it, and then they artificially connect it to gender ideology. So, and then they deceptively link the two together. So when they say 1% or 1.7%, which I think that's even a high estimate for that phenomenon,
Yeah, no,
they're talking about
it's point
everybody who
zero.
identifies as something other than what they are. They're talking about full-blown males, calling themselves women, or full-blown women calling themselves men. So they're equating the imaginary fetishist gender ideology, where people are pretending to be something they're not, and lumping the the intersex condition in with that, which is also another way of obscuring the issue and trying to cause confusion and divert attention from the actual facts at hand. So that's another thing to keep in perspective. When they give that other number, the 1.7%, they're talking about the transvestites, which is the traditional term for that, not transgender. It's transvestite because they're putting on the vestige of something they're not. They're not literally changing their real gender. So, and then
No, you can't.
that's a further point that needs clarification.
Yes, because you can't do that. You can't
Mhm.
actually change your
It,
chromosomes. That's an impossibility. You can take all the drugs and have all
yeah,
the cosmetic surgeries you want. It
I
doesn't
mean,
change your biology.
it's
So
as rational as saying identifies a different blood type. Let somebody go into the Red Cross and say, yeah, my test might say I'm AB positive, but I identify as O negative, therefore the universal donor to give my blood anyway. They would, you would be laughed out of there, I mean, but that's literally what the absurdity of what we're talking about. And
yeah, and that number, just so everybody knows, that number, you
and
can
they will
if you
do
just
anything they
search.
can on that end to.
Go ahead, Casey. Go ahead.
Oh no, what I was okay, we can sidetrack here, but yeah. So anyway, going back to the controversy. So apparently, this created a stir even beyond the end of the meeting. Um, Terry Mickles, who's running in Region 2 for school board against Kelly Brent, her husband apparently wrote a letter to the school board and the administration to try to either ban me from speaking at school board meetings or to publicly call me out and condemn me. They're basically trying to silence me because he was so offended by what I had to say. And of course, they're not going to try to argue with the points I made because they know they can't argue them. And this is a typical of the cultural Marxist left. That is their tyrannical nature and a feeling of entitlement, that they feel that being entitled is the only ones to ever speak their perspective and can't even handle any kind of challenge. But that also exposes the weakness of their positions and just how invalid it is if they can't even handle one lone voice against it. Now, at this particular meeting, I think there was one other person that spoke from the same perspective I did on this issue. And there were probably a dozen that spoke from the other perspective. I mean, there was, because the other side is very active, even though they are definitely in the minority, especially in this issue. They are the overwhelming majority of voices heard because they're very passionate about it. But yeah, there was probably anywhere, I'd say at least 6 other people that spoke at that meeting, promoting gender ideology and their view of being able to be transgender and everything else. And then the one voice that spoke boldly against it, or even the 2 that just spoke against it at all, they can't even stomach it. It's amazing. So
Yeah, that was so they're probably trying to prevent you from even speaking at the meetings
mhm,
anymore.
yeah. Yeah, at least Terry Mickles' husband was. Now, I don't see. Maybe I'm being too overconfident, but I don't see this board going for that. The way it's currently constructed, I mean, Lord willing, nothing changes too drastically in the wrong direction after the next election. But as of now, we have at least 5 members on that board that have basic common sense and respect
Yeah,
basic free speech. So
I
I
don't
don't
see how they
see
could do
them
that.
catering to that or caving into it. you know yeah, especially on, well, I will say this: if that were to ever occur, like say this next election goes the wrong way and you get a bunch of tyrannical commies in there that will do something like that, they better be prepared for the storm, because I will take them to the cleaners in court for blatant discrimination, because by no objective measure was anything I said against any kind of official decorum or protocol. I mean, there are certain rules they have which get violated all the time, by the way, but not by me, such as you're not supposed to address school board directors directly by name or call them out, or members of the administration there at the board. You're not supposed to name them, by their policy, and attack them directly. But people do that all the time with no
I don't see how
consequence, and
that's even.
nothing's done about
How
it.
do they even get away with that,
You
though?
know,
How do they even get away with not?
I mean, I hear you, but I agree. I mean, even though me personally, I don't do that as a practice because I think it diverts attention away from the issue and just makes it look personal instead of transactional, which is what these issues always should be. I've never yet in a single board meeting made a speech in which I directly addressed any board member or administration member by name. Now, but others do it all the time. I mean, Kelly Brent and Heidi Thomas have been viciously, I mean, just insulted and demeaned by people on several occasions in those meetings and hatefully attacked. And in all fairness, it happens on the other way too. I mean, even my wife has on occasion called out like Abigail Tierney and Todd Stoltz by name, and that's her prerogative. I'm not, bashing them. I'm just saying I never done any of those things. Yet I'm the one that they now want to silence, which is quite ironic. So, but yeah, I don't, I haven't broken any protocols or violated any policy, unlike several others have, and there's been nobody saying that they shouldn't be talking.
Yeah. So now you got people who want to keep you from even speaking at the meetings now. Hopefully the board won't go for that, although I don't see how they could legitimately do that anyway. What kind of how quickly was the eruption from the other side there at the meeting? Because they were in force. We could
literally before I even got back to my seat. Yeah, as soon as I stood up and was walking back to my seat, she started screaming. It was not even, I would say, more than 2 seconds. And like I said earlier, I guess the president, Kelly Brent, saw her about to erupt before she even actually did, and it immediately adjourned the meeting. So none of the drama was caught on camera or on audio, and she called security over right away to quell the situation.
See, she should have left the cameras on for a little longer.
And it also blew the water out. No, she didn't. No, the cameras cut off.
No, she didn't, but she should have.
She should have?
Yeah, because and that's why I've been saying I'm going to try. I don't know if I'll be able to in March, but if I can I'd like to get to one of these meetings when the other side is going to come out in force, and that way it doesn't matter if they cut the meeting, we're still live, and they get to see the eruption. Yeah, they get to see the eruption. We get to see the eruption live in real time. So I think that's something we need to try, and I'm going to try and
do is get to a meeting. Well, that was the first time I've ever seen that happen in any meeting I attend, where there was, that kind of blatant, loud drama immediately following the meeting. Now, I have heard that some of our other friends on other occasions, I wasn't there for this, but were followed out into the parking lot where people were trying to provoke a confrontation with them. I've heard of that happening, but that was the only time I've ever seen or heard of that kind of drama in the meeting or after it itself. And again, and I didn't even address, the tiniest fraction of the things I would love to address if there was the time to do it.
No, 4 minutes.
I mean, especially this one guy, and in this case, I'm gonna break my own rule here and call him by name, Jay Hess. This dude, he's always bringing in these giant quote studies, and he's our favorite. He hands into the school board. Do Casey, your research.
Casey, he's the one. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but he's the one who, if anybody watches the live watch along, I'm the one. That's the one I say. Our number one fan, the Boiling Point Podcast's number one fan is speaking right now. That's who Casey's talking about right now.
And the thing is, I've read some of these quote studies, right? Yeah. And what they do in a nutshell, okay, is they'll basically repeat the same point over and over again, but they do it with fancy 20-letter words that they concoct to make it sound respectable. It sounds professional and intelligent because you're using all this, advanced vocabulary. But all they're literally saying, when you break it down to brass tacks in the simple layman's terms, is that one's personal imaginations and desires and fetishes supersedes biological physical reality in determining their true gender identity. And that's literally all it's saying. And these are the quote studies that he puts forth. I mean, it'll talk about chromosomal differences, but of course
from the World Health
they don't talk about. Yeah, but the chromosomes they conveniently don't mention are the X and Y chromosomes, the only ones that are even remotely relevant and the only determining factors of what someone's true sex, i.e. gender, is, because yes, the two are interchangeable. And so they avoid that. They also talk about chemical balances in the brain.
All these are microscopic. Anyway. That's always the way to get around these quicker. For anybody watching right now, if someone brings this up to you, what about intersex and what about people who have genetic disorders? Make sure you inform them that it's 0.18 0.018%
Point
is
zero one
the
eight.
rarity of
You
it.
know,
And ask them that if
so that's
if we
18
were
out of
willing
every
to,
100,000 people.
yeah, and ask them if they were willing to just say, okay, accept for these 0.2 people. Let's say these 2.2 people are fine. Fine. These 0.2 people get to be intersex. They get to be both,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. If we agree to say that that can happen,
Mm-hmm.
can we agree that the other
Mm-hmm.
99.98% of the population are not, no matter what
Exactly.
they say or what they
And
feel like?
also going
That's
back
where
to
they'll
these
hit you.
right, and
That's
going back to these so-called studies, they also reference like hormonal imbalances and again brain chemistry. Now again, what these studies conveniently, deliberately fail to mention is that many of the same discrepancies are also found in people who are Alzheimer's patients, dementia patients, um,
schizophrenia.
paranoid schizophrenic disorders, bipolar disorders, brain
Yep.
cancer. So the gender dysphoria, gender confusion, when it is genuine gender confusion, I'll get to that in a minute,
Yeah.
is no different than any other psychological disorder or brain disease in that you have these factors present. So, and what we don't do to people suffering from those other conditions, we don't affirm their delusions. We don't validate what they believe that is in contrast to reality, because at their own detriment and at the detriment of the greater good. Instead, we treat them as best we can. We help them as best we can to cope with their condition, and in some cases, completely recover from it. That's what we should be also be doing with people who are truly gender dysphoric. Now, with that
Yeah.
said, another thing, again, deliberately not mentioned in these quote studies, is that most people with this gender dysphoria, gender identity, whatever they want to call it, are not in fact actually dysphoric and don't have those conditions prominent within their body. It's due to other factors. Again, we're talking about fetishes, desires, fantasies, so forth. There's
Mental
also
illness.
the what's that?
Mental illness. I
What'd you
mean,
say?
some of this is definitely as a result of mental
That too.
illness.
But also there's the fantasies, desires. There's also the social contagion. There's a
Oh yeah,
lot of social rewards and praise and acolytes and telling you you're so brave and courageous by coming out, and this is all promoted by the current cultural zeitgeist. So social contagion has a lot to do with it. And in the case of
absolutely.
sports, taking an unfair advantage, for people who have no sense of shame, who just want to get a cheat and get an instant reward that they didn't earn, and men who can't compete against other men, let's go to a women's sport and easily win it that way. And let's not kid ourselves, perverts, creeper men who just want to find an easy way to get in the presence of naked or undressed women. Yeah, they'll that way they can get into their locker rooms and their restrooms, and in worst case scenarios, attack them or rape them. So there's many factors involved that are more often the case than actual real even gender confusion or dysphoria of reasons why people do these things. And
Yeah.
that's why the issue, the bottom line of it is, and it really is the only um, uh, factor that matters, is about protecting women and girls from predatory men and protecting children from predatory adults. And
Yeah.
because this whole gender nonsense, I mean, we're not talking about people who simply live a bizarre fantasy and mind their own business. Nobody would care what they do if they do it that way. They'd be weird.
In
They'd
their
be like,
own
okay,
home. And the
that's
problems
strange, tongue in cheek.
in
But when you are enforcing your delusions or desires on everybody else, including and up to abusing others in the worst way, particularly with this, I mean, downright evil insanity of genitally mutilating children. And I'm sorry, there's no such thing as a transgendered kid. There's no such thing.
no.
No 5-year-old boy on this planet, on his own, of his own devices, without any provocation or influence from a predatory adult in his life, is going to go up to his mom or dad and say, "Mommy, Daddy, I want to be a little girl. Chop my wee off." That's not going to happen. It never has happened.
Well,
Never will happen. There's no such
even
thing
if
as a
you,
trans kid. Those
yeah,
so-called
even
trans kids
those
are
kids,
abused kids. You know,
Kids,
go ahead.
there's kids that like tomboys, girls who act more boy than girls, and then there's boys who maybe like to bake or like to clean, spend more
Mm-hmm.
time with their moms. Like that's just part of growing up, though, right? Like experience, like
Right.
wanting that. Like, but that doesn't mean that they want to be, or that you should let them
Mm-hmm.
actually change their
Well,
gender.
yeah.
That's horrific. Are we having a delay,
More
Casey? It seems like we're
having a
having some audio
typical more.
problems.
I can hear you now. Yeah,
Okay.
you have been chopped up a few times. Can you hear me
Okay.
now?
Yeah. So we're having a few audio
Am I coming
problems,
through
but it's
clearly?
okay. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Casey.
So, yeah, there are certain behaviors or interests that are Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
there
Casey.
are certain behaviors or interests that are more common to one gender or another, right? So, but it doesn't mean that they literally are the other gender. The fact that a man might enjoy cooking and fine arts and theater as opposed to physical contact sports doesn't mean he's a literal woman. It just means he enjoys something that is more common to the interest of women than a man. The same with vice versa. Now, I
Yeah.
mean, it would be no more rational to say that they're literally another gender than to apply it in any other circumstance. Say you find a golden retriever that is unusually aggressive, or a Rottweiler that is unusually friendly. Okay, that doesn't mean the Rottweiler is actually a golden retriever and the golden retriever is actually a Rottweiler and they were born in the wrong dog body. No, it just so happens to be that they each one of those dogs in that
Yeah.
circumstance have a common trait common to the other breed. That doesn't mean they literally are the other breed.
I
And then
like that one.
that's another sinister, deliberately confusing factor these gender confusion advocates use. If somebody likes something that is common to the other gender more than would typically be of their own gender, that somehow means they're in the wrong body, and that's just logically preposterous. Sorry. you know
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. It absolutely is. Well, that's it. I can't believe that all happened again. That's why I think they should have. I think the president should have kept the cameras rolling a little bit longer. I think they should have showed the explosion, in real time. But that's just me.
mhm.
It probably wouldn't have been good for the school board to show that, but I think it still should have been shown. I can't believe that you got attacked like that after the meeting. That's crazy. I can't believe they're trying to ban you too
Mhm.
from that, just from reading that statement that we had up at the beginning of the episode. That's really astonishing to me that they're actually trying to ban
And
you
like I
from that.
said, I don't see the current school board. I mean, I'm not really surprised, disgusted, but not surprised. I mean, this is common of the political left. This is one of their main tactics. I mean, you look what they do on the national and global level. All the social media giants who are all owned by these hardcore leftists. The media in general. They cancel people, they deplatform them, they demonetize them because they don't like what they're saying, even if what they're saying is provably true. You know, I mean, we've seen it so many times on the national level. I mean, remember the infamous Hunter Biden laptop. They spiked that story in 2020 so it wouldn't hurt Joe Biden in the election and claimed it was, quote, Russian disinformation when it was proven beyond any shadow of a doubt to be factual. And there have been many, other examples that I'm not going to, go down rabbit trail here and now with, but where there were media stories that they deliberately claimed were disinformation or misinformation that were proven beyond any shadow of a doubt to be true. And then the media apparatus, the same social media and media apparatus, then would produce blatantly false stories and keep them on their sites or on their news pages when they were provably false. So this is
Yeah.
a common phenomenon we see typically from the political left, and you don't see this on the right. That's not to say that right wingers don't have their own biases and perspectives. We do, but you won't ever see a right wing person demand that a left wing voice be canceled or silenced simply because they don't like their viewpoint, or claim that
No.
it's, quote, disinformation if they're stating something factually correct. That only goes one way. But that's
Yeah.
the tyrannical and entitled narcissistic nature of the political left.
Yeah. Well, after Doge is done and Elon Musk, the Democratic Party might not be much left of the Democratic Party after they're done. So we'll have to wait and see in some upcoming elections how that works
Well,
out. But
I mean,
uh,
I'm not so optimistic. I mean, let's not forget that the hard left still has all the wealth and power. Pretty much the only billionaires on the
True.
planet, activists politically, that are not hard leftists are Elon Musk and Donald Trump. There's hundreds of
Yeah,
others, such as the entire World Economic Forum apparatus, so forth. Everybody who owns the international banks and the social media and the media complex and Hollywood and entertainment, music industry, they're all hardcore leftists. So I'm not so
true,
optimistic yet. They still own
true.
and
But
control everything, all the
after the last
influencers
election, it was
in society, and they certainly own and control.
yeah, we're having a delay. I'm sorry, I don't know why that's happening, Casey.
Hello,
I was gonna
John?
say, can you not hear me? Hello, can you not hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah,
Okay, Casey, we're back. What I was gonna
I
say
can hear you.
was
Can you hear me?
I have not had any problems hearing you the whole night. It's just a one-way thing. For some reason, you're having trouble hearing me tonight. I don't know why that is.
Okay.
Um, Usually Mariana's equipment works very well, so I don't know why
Hopefully it's not on the recording that people watch.
it'll just probably us adjusting it. StreamYard's pretty good about catching these things. So other than us addressing it, they likely won't even notice. They're probably going to be like, "What are they talking about? There was no errors." Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's because StreamYard is pretty good software and actually can correct some of that as it's happening. But so, is there anything else you wanted to talk about here about after the meeting and what happened? I think we pretty much covered it.
I mean, as far as specifically after the meeting, I guess not. I mean, there's 1,001 things going through my head, and I'm sure there'll be something I think about after we're done. Yeah, I should have said this. I should have talked about that. but yeah, I mean, that's basically covers the basics of what happened immediately following the meeting and the aftermath of now certain people. And there is one in particular on a school board. I'm going to leave this person unnamed for now, but I'm pretty sure, based on history, everybody can probably guess who it is, who is also part of the movement to try to get me banned or sanctioned or condemned or something because of what I said. And interestingly enough, if you were going to apply the standard of keeping somebody away from the board meetings at all or stop them from speaking, you would think they would do it to somebody who actually did something inappropriate, such as having a meltdown right after the meeting and causing a scene.
Yeah.
not the person who made a legitimate speech that didn't break any protocols or decorum.
Yeah, I mean, having to have security called over is a pretty serious issue. So, well, thank you for joining me, and we're going to have Casey on more frequently as we continue our coverage of the West Shore School District, and we're even going to tap Casey to help us do some other episodes and bring him in to talk about some more national stuff. And I apologize, that's my phone going off, likely telling me that I need to switch studios because if we're recording this on the 25th, which if you're wondering, it's because we also live streamed the Northern School Board meeting on the 25th. So I'm further adding to the story that I can be in two places at once because currently I am. So thank you for tuning into this and keep following us. We'll have more follow-up with Casey, and the next school board meetings will be in March. Look for them. We'll get them scheduled and up on our social media so that you can track the events and know when we're going to go live again. And we also have a lot of episodes coming up over the next couple of weeks, pretty much through the month of March. The Boiling Point podcast is going to be very busy. We got lots of different episodes coming up. So stay tuned for that. And of course, check out our Old Testament survey series, which has returned, releasing every Wednesday night on both our channels and Pastor Gavin's channels. And of course, Mariana, who is Casey's wife, Mariana Reed, who is just as crazy as me when it comes to producing content. So she produces just as much content as I do. So she's got something that I need to produce now, and she's got like 3 or 4 other episodes already out. Check our channels for those. Leave her a comment. Share them out as we continue to grow and expand. And tune into the Northern School District coverage as we cover that. And if you are in not one of these, in the West Shore or the Northern, and you'd like us to get involved, send us a message. Send us an email, reach out to us, and we will get involved. Casey, thanks for taking the time to join me. I know that you haven't even had dinner yet either, so I'm going to let you go have dinner, and I'm going to get to my back to my other live broadcast so I can finish out tonight and then eventually stop at some point. So thanks for tuning in. Share it out. Hit the like button. And until next time, I am your host, JD, and that's the end.